Hi friends, welcome back. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, hi, I'm Pamela, and today we are going to be reading Never Flinch by Stephen King. The release date was yesterday, and I went out and bought it, and I read the first chapter. So I'm not very far into it, but we just had stuff to do yesterday, so I did not get to it. But today we are going to be spending pretty much the whole day reading it. There is a few things I want to get done around the house first, and then I will go ahead and start reading this book. I'm excited. This is I don't want to say it's a continuation, but it kind of is, of the Holly book. Holly is one of Stephen King's characters. Holly is introduced in the Bill Hodges trilogy. After that, it is Holly, and then it's this new book, which is Never Flinch. Holly is a detective. We just follow her on her case. So far, this one is turning out to be just as sad as all the other ones. So right off the bat, we are introduced to a man who we find out is named Trig, or at least that's how he introduces himself as, because he mentions that is typically how he introduces himself. So we are introduced to Trig. He is in an AA meeting, and he's there because although he hasn't drank in a while, it seems like, he's there because it was either go to an AA meeting or relapse. And he chose the AA meeting because somebody was unalived that he cared for in prison, and that's why he was there. So right off the bat, we're introduced to him in that situation. So then we are reintroduced to Izzy James. She is one of the detectives that we met in Holly, and she is called by her lieutenant because he wants her to check out this letter, and he trusts Izzy's opinion and intuition. So he asks her to read this letter, and Izzy's like, I'm not sure, let me contact Holly. But the lieutenant is like, we're not there yet, but what do you think? And she feels like this letter is a threat, although she has no idea where it could be coming from or from who. And the letter basically states that because one innocent life was lost, 13 more innocent people will have to pay the price, including one guilty. I don't know, something like that. But even Izzy questions, is it going to be 13 innocent people and then the 14th is going to be the guilty person? Or is the guilty person included in those 13? Because the letter is kind of like, you can't really understand, I guess, the number. And they believe it is tied to the current inmate that was recently killed, and after he was killed, it was found out that he was actually incarcerated innocently. He was not the perpetrator for the crime that he had been accused of. So they think that the innocent person lost is him, and somehow it's all going to be connected. I believe it probably will, just based on how Holly turned out, like the book Holly turned out to be. I believe we're going to be following different timelines, and then at the end, it's all going to come together in this enormous explosion, I guess, for lack of a better word. And we're going to get an epic story. That's kind of how Holly the book was. You follow different people and different timelines, and then I don't know, my anxiety kind of revved up a little bit towards the end because I knew that the timelines were kind of all aligning to this big moment. And I have a feeling this one might be like that. Again, I'm only 30 pages in and a chapter in. I'm barely going to start chapter 2. So I'm not 100%, but I think that's kind of where it's going, just based on how the chapters are laid out right now. And Stephen King most of his books are like that. You follow different timelines. And then they all come together. It's a little scary, not because it's it or something where it might have this scary being, but it is scary in the sense of we have, people like this running around our world, our real world. And that's scary. Trying to understand, I guess, why people do what they do, and the evil that is in people, and all of that. That's also kind of what made Holly a little bit creepy and, you know, scary, was that there was no other realm, thing, or person involved. It was just humans being evil. I don't know, like, I feel like lately Stephen King has kind of gone into that more. And I personally like it. So without further ado, let's just get started. I do want to pick up my desk and my studio a little bit, and then I'm just going to go ahead and head to the living room and have some reading time. Hi guys, so it's been a few days, technically like a day and a half since I last filmed anything, and I'm about halfway done with the book. So now I have a reading update, and I don't think I ever showed the cover of the book. I don't like to read hardbacks with the sleeves on. So I think in the first clips when I said what I was reading, I just like showed the book, but it had nothing. So technically this is the cover, Never Flinch by Stephen King. In Never Flinch, I thought we were gonna have like 2 or 3 people we were following, like perspectives, but we're actually following 6 points of views. So the chapters, not the chapters, but the sections within the chapter, you could be reading multiple like perspectives. So if that is really something that you do not like in a book, I still think Stephen King books are worth it and you should still go for it. But I totally understand also if that's not your thing. So just be aware of that. We are following 6 perspectives right now. We are following Holly, who is with Kate. So we're following like that scenario and that situation. We are following Barbara and Jerome. They're the siblings. And then they, you know, they have their own thing going on. We are following Trig, who at this point, and very fairly early, like the first few chapters, he is our serial killer. We're following Chris, who has religious trauma and like mental health problems. And I misspoke. There's only 5, not 6. Not that, you know, sometimes it does feel like 6, but I can't get into why it feels like 6, but technically it's 5. So in Holly's timeline right now, we are following, you know, I think I did go in, like I did describe like the initial situation of like the detective contacting Holly because they received the letter. Okay, so right now, Kate, she is one of the characters that we're following through Holly. And Kate, she is a women's rights activist / like speaker, and she has been threatened by somebody. And at first the threats were harmless, but then like it turns and it becomes kind of dangerous to the point where Holly is then hired by her, like by her team. And that is why we're following her through Holly. So she is, you know, giving these motivational speeches about women's rights. And we're also technically following her assistant. But at this point, we do know that she's technically somebody in danger. So there is kind of like that mystery there, like suspense part. Then we are following Jerome and Barbara. And in their chapters, they alternate perspectives. So sometimes, you know, you're reading it as Barbara, but then sometimes you're reading it through Jerome's point of view, but I am counting them as one, because they're in the same situation. Like, they are traveling and they're together, and Jerome is actually kind of helping Holly out, and he is investigating certain things for her. And then we're following Trig, which it's not obviously stated, but you do know fairly, like in the first 3 chapters, that he is the one that wrote the letter that got sent to the police station. So we're following Trig. He is in Alcoholics Anonymous, and because he's addicted, and yeah, he is our serial killer. Again, he starts doing this in the first 50 pages of the book, and it honestly just seems senseless. I know that in his brain, it's like, it makes sense, and he's validated, like he validates himself. However, just be aware that that does happen, and it is a big part of the plot. And then we are also following Chris, who is a super religious person, but the more you read, the more, like right now, actually, where I stopped reading, we kind of got a little bit more into his like background and like why he is the way that he is, and he's doing the things he's doing. And we actually find out that he actually has mental health problems, and therefore it's also religion. He doesn't view religion the way most people, I feel like, do. It's like he's very extreme about it, but I think it is correlated to his mental health problem that he has. And I think it just became kind of like religious trauma in a way. So I'm eager to find out how King kind of ties it in together, because again, we just kind of got a glimpse of Chris's his childhood, and it's pretty sad. So yeah, those are the characters we are following. I know I just did a horrible job. Like, I probably did not explain the plot at all. I'm really enjoying this book so far. I do have to say though that it has been a little bit jarring at times, and I think that's why I've also put it down and I haven't like binged read it like other books that I have in the past. Just because to me, these are real situations that are happening in our world right now, especially with like our political climate that we're in. It's not far-fetched at all. So yeah, it's a little bit jarring at times. So I have been taking breaks here and there just because, again, I feel like it's heavy matter, but that's because of, it just seems like you turn on the news right now and you could find stories that are identical to what's happening in this book. So yeah, if that's something you want to read right now. So let's see how I end up liking this book. So far, I think because we are following multiple points of views, it is breaking up apart the story for me a little bit better. Hi guys, so I just realized that I never finished this reading vlog, and I finished reading this book about 2 to 3 days ago. So my bad. I'm wearing a hat. I typically don't wear hats, but I'm wearing one today because we were out and it was hot, it was sunny, so here we are. But my final thoughts on the book, I don't have a lot to add from the last update that I gave because I don't want to get into spoilers. I really enjoyed this book. Is it my new all-time favorite Stephen King book? No. I wasn't expecting it to because it's part of a series. I think once he says that the series is complete, then I might go back and figure out which one is my favorite book. But as of right now, it was like a 4 star. So to me, that's a great book. And if you are thinking into getting into Holly Gibney and her world, I do recommend it. If you want to go into the more psycho thriller-esque part of Stephen King's books. Was it gross? I don't think anything was gross, at least not that I remember. But was it creepy? Yes, it was very creepy, and it was very much like a psycho thriller. It was very intense, and it just felt like the stakes were super high because the stakes were people's lives. So it was high. It was, it is a little bit political in the sense that it does reference things that have happened within the last 3 to 5 years in our current reality. So if you're not into that, you know, just be prepared. It is Stephen King. He does typically, I don't want to say I mean, it's political because there's political stuff in it and all that, but it's just, it's part of our reality too, you know, and he just includes that in it. And other books have different current events from back in the day too. Like he talks a lot about Reagan in other books. So that was the political climate back then, and he talked about it. It's not new with Stephen King, but it is kind of recent. Like the last Holly book is very much centered around COVID, and for me, it was like I didn't really enjoy reading it about it because we had just come out of it. So this one is not like that. It does mention like the pandemic, but it's nothing like Holly in that sense. Holly, it felt like we were going back into lockdown, you know, and I'm like, I kind of don't want to read about it if, you know, because we just went through that. So this one's not like that. In this book, we also get to see Holly step out of her comfort zone a lot more. And honestly, it was so much fun seeing her. And my battery died. But yeah, it's cool to see how she like talked herself into things that were healthy for her and that she needed to do. It was just cool to see Holly take those like little leaps of, you know, trusting herself. She still maintains true to who she is, but she is starting to like, you know, expand her horizons a little bit, and it's really sweet. And the ending of this book was how I pictured it ending. Like I knew that there was going to be so much buildup and then this big old thing was going to happen. It did do that, but it was not in the way I was expecting it to, and that threw me off, and I loved it. It was great because you know, being an avid Stephen King reader, you pick up on certain things. So like I kind of knew where it was headed, but it did not end how I thought it was going to end. It was great and so much better than what I had pictured in my head. The tension in this book is just so palpable, so I highly recommend it if you want to have a good thrillery, psychological thriller time. Would I recommend it as a standalone? I don't think so. At least read Holly, the book titled Holly, first before reading this one. So in Holly, you do get spoilers for the ending of the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. So if you don't want to go all the way back to that trilogy or like The Outsiders, I would say read at least Holly and then read this one, because like I said, you will have spoilers for the end of that series and spoilers to The Outsider. But if you read Holly, you'll be able to pick up on this one, like where it leaves off. And yeah, I don't think you'll miss much. But you do build a stronger relationship with Holly and Jerome and Barbara if you do read the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. I hope all of that made sense. So yeah, I'm just going to end the video here, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And if you read this book, let me know what you thought. I know it's been getting some mixed reviews, so I'm eager to see how it landed with you. See you guys next time. Bye.